So I'm about to spend $30,000 in virtual goods before we start this panel, because that was impressive. So I was reading this piece by Chris Anderson about the web being dead. I think I was reading it on a website before I managed to find this rather low-key headline, which led to this fine panel of experts to work out if the web is dead and everything is going through apps, how we're going to make money. Or maybe Google's got a website, so let's see if they still have a business plan. Very quickly, I'm going to introduce the panel. You probably know who they are. So Hugo from Google, Hugo Barra, the product director in charge of apps and services across all platforms. Christian Hernandez from Facebook, the man heading...
On mobile, I should say.
Sorry.
Mobile, sorry.
Christian heading international business development for Facebook, which is going into a few territories. Ilja Laurs, the Lithuanian national hero who gets stopped in the street back home, who's the founder and CEO of GetJar, the mega app store. And Raoul Roverato, in charge of new growth business at Orange, the carrier. But let's jump right in and work out, is the web passe? What's Google's view on this?
Okay, so I think before answering the question, is the web dead, I would ask another question and then try to answer it first. And the question I would ask is, so what is it about apps and the apps economy that has made it so successful so quickly? And my personal take is that there's three important things. The first one is the platform itself. When you're writing apps natively, you're writing native code, you have much finer control of the hardware, which obviously means your apps are going to be much tighter at the expense of portability. Second is discoverability and distribution. The app economy is based on a catalog that's structured and organized by design so that people can find things in that catalog easily, as opposed to the pin in a haystack traditional web model, right? And then third, the app economy is also based on a centralized billing system with a single trusted agent, which makes it easy for developers to sell their stuff and for users to buy it. And there's an advertising model that goes with that as well. What's interesting is that it seems like people sort of mix these three things together and think about that as one, as opposed to trying to really pull them apart and understand what's what. And it's viable, for example, to have a web app in one of these catalogs, to have a web app in an app store. It's viable to have a web app be a paid app, right, using subscription, one-off payments, et cetera. And in fact, we're already seeing examples of those things happening. And I'd cite as two examples the Chrome Web Store, which will open soon it's already open for developers, it'll open soon for users. Secondly, there's already thousands and thousands of web apps in the Apple App Store and in the Android market. They are disguised as native apps because they have a little bit of sort of native code that wraps that web app around, but they are web apps. So sort of my short answer to your question is the web isn't dead. Parts of the web is actually going through an appification process, if you will. And then I think the real point that probably will be next year's discussion is, what about cost of development and ROI, right? And we can talk about that here, or we can talk about it next year.
We'll talk about spending and also making money in a second. So we're not going to the browser for as many experiences. We're relying on streaming video APIs, one touch. I mean, GetJar, how many apps have you sold in the last couple of minutes since you've been up here?
Well, we distribute apps, so actually we do 40 downloads a second, right? So you can calculate, how much time we set here, and currently we're approaching 100 million a month. Actually, have passed that.
And so this is across all sorts of platforms.
Yeah, that's across all sorts of platforms. Absolutely right.
Which does suggest that there's a thriving business there for the app.
Yeah, absolutely, because apparently, as Hugo said very correctly, for many developers, app stores themselves and the whole concept of app, combines three things, and one is absolutely new paradigm of how you can build services. You can tailor them and make them much more appealing than the web, right? But also don't forget that it's also an easy billing platform, and it's also a very, powerful marketing platform. And I would emphasize marketing because I think that's what really makes a lot of developers to work on these platforms, because unlike on the web, where you can or may not get lucky to be listed in Google like in top 10, but typically App Store provides you a pretty large boost. So if you're like a one-man developer, and just by virtue of submitting to App Store, you already have like a massive, powerful marketing support. So I think that highlighting their success and not really having to spend tons of time on really seeking distribution for your app is what really attracts a lot of developers to that platform.
Okay. Let's get straight to the money. People are spending money on content, on downloads, through the app stores. They're not spending money on content through the desktop internet. I mean, the last figures I saw were the top 25 paid apps on the iPhone. People are spending on average about $1.27. Now the iPads come along, $5.71 for the top 25 paid apps. This sounds like it's a new business model. Now, as an operator, do you think everybody you deal with should be now focusing on this? Every marketer, every brand should be offering something, especially a content owner?
Yeah, what's really great about applications is that we've been able to, as an ecosystem, to tailor applications that are really appealing, that provide real service to the client, and they're ready to pay for them. So the money is going out of their wallets, and that's the great opportunity. Now, what we see is that the first thing is they're ready to pay, but it needs to be easy to pay. So we need to work together to make it easy for them to pay. The other thing is that consumers are not ready to pay for content on the mobile. Well, a small portion of them are. But they're ready to pay for a bigger subscription that includes content. And we're being very successful as a telecom operator with our thousands of shops, with our billions of advertising over the line marketing, to promote applications as part of telecom bundles. We have an experience here in France with Deezer, which is a Spotify that's very popular here in France. And in the course of 10 weeks, we've sold 200,000 subscriptions to Deezer Premium, which is a very powerful way to monetize. So as a content owner, applications is your way to monetize on the web. Firstly on the mobile, on the iPad, on the tablets. You've seen what we've done with the Van Cat Act 2 just before. And you need to work with, we need to work with you to use your brand and our marketing power to get the money out of our consumers' wallets. So really
it's not simply you need to go to the iTunes store where they've got your credit card. There are other models of raising revenue.
Yeah, exactly. The iTunes have the consumer's credit card, but in iTunes you've got hundreds of thousands of applications, so you're lost in the mix. An operator can help you bring your application forward on the home screen on different places in the device, and we can help you bringing your content within a marketing a telco mobile contract, and this will drive a lot of adoption. So there are other ways than just building on the application store. You can also work with us to jointly market applications. That's what we've done with Google, we've done it with Facebook, we've done it with Deezer, we've done it with a bunch of people.
So there's no shortage of apps out there. No. I just saw the number about 500,000 at the moment. It's impossible to count. Surely the question is discovery, how the consumer finds these apps. I mean, Christian, Facebook is all about social. Is discovering through your friends going to be the way forward?
Yeah, obviously we're biased, and the answer would be yes. But I think one thing I wanted to correct is that you said that there's no monetization on the browser, which is, I mean, I would argue Zynga, Playfish, Playdom, CrowdStar would probably disagree with that. There's quite a bit of money being made on apps on the browser, on the internet, on the web. Mobile is an evolution that has maybe a bit more history behind it. But the problem that existed on the web, which is billions of static HTML documents, applies to apps as well. So you have all these pages, you have no idea where to find the information. Enter a fantastic algorithm, Google, that actually helps you find that specific page you wanted. Now apply it to apps where you have 500,000 apps on Facebook or 500,000 apps on the Apple iStore. How do you find that one app? And right now it's either the marketing guy at Apple determining which ones are going to be featured, therefore a very, very small subset, or a co-marketing agreement with Ilja, or an algorithm on the Android store, or the operator deciding which apps they preload on a device. So in a way, somebody's editorializing, be it a person or an algorithm, what you're going to play and what you're going to download. much as we've seen with the way media is being consumed via Facebook, we think that also apply to apps. A person reads an article in New York Times, found it interesting, posted on Facebook. Because the recommendation for that article came from your friend, high probability that you'll interact with that article, be it liking it, commenting on it, linking through and going back to the media site. Same thing with apps. Because you played a game and you invite your friends, which is the game dynamics and social dynamics that Zynga and all these companies added to their social games, you kind of built a community around the game. Those communities are now being applied to mobile devices as well. We saw the one from SGN where you can invite your friends to be your poker dealer or be your casino hostess. What I think is going to happen is that this catalog of apps will have a personal layer on top of it, a way to actually discover what your friends are playing or your friends are downloading and discover apps through that. There's a French startup called AppsFire that's one of my favorite startups right now. They take your phone and they sync your phone to the web so they know what apps are on your phone. And they use Facebook Connect on top of that to figure out who your friends are. So I can now go browse your phone and figure out what apps you have on your phone and from that download it. So it changes the whole paradigm from the editorial Apple marketing guide to my friend being the editor. And it's going to get really interesting as these guys think about social, as they think about social, as Orange thinks about social, how this layer on top of the editorial layer changes discovery.
I think Mark Zuckerberg probably already knows what's on my phone, actually. The message for marketers, then, is where should they be? I mean, there are endless numbers of platforms. Everybody has an app store. There's the Mac operating system Mac store. As Hugo said, the Chrome one. Ford Motor Cars is producing an app store. We can't surely, if we're producing a product or selling content, provide it for every single platform, because that turns media companies into software geniuses. Where should we start?
Well, there is a pretty common approach right now, what I call the pyramid, and that means, well, unlike the web, where you used to basically write only one user experience or one interface, actually right now you have a choice. And again, the principle behind this pyramid approach is basically that you start with the least common denominator, which for mobile today is mobile web. So we see today companies primarily starting with the mobile web. And then next, basically what happens is you look at the sizes of your audiences and which platforms they have, and also evaluate how much you could improve the user experience for specifically that platform. So for example, if like a third of your visitors happen to be iPhones, and you know that you can really much improve the user experience for these iPhones, you basically multiply the size by the increase in the user experience, and you get this rectangle. And if the value of that rectangle is huge, you invest into that on top of your mobile web. So you end up having like mobile web on beneath, and then the rectangle of like very really optimized iPhone user experience. And then you evaluate your next option. So your next option might be BlackBerry or Android or something else. And basically you go like more and more and more until you find out that the rectangle for your next platform is actually pretty small. You might find out that maybe it's not worth really writing a dedicated LG client, because only like 2% of your audience has LGs, and that specific LG supports only Java, so the delta in user experience is really very small. So basically you stop there. But the funny thing is, yes, you do end up with having like multiple interfaces available to your users. So you have to maintain all of them. But again, it's like a rational economical choice. I know how much is worth to maintain. What's the ROI? What's your economics? So that's the most typical approach that we see.
Fast forward 1 year, maybe not even. This has to stop somewhere. In a year's time, you could argue we will have 4, maybe 5, maybe 6 fantastic platforms with great user experiences, tens of millions of users. iPhone, Android, BlackBerry with a great new browser, hopefully, Windows Phone 7, Chrome OS, Nokia's platform, whatever that is in a year or 2 from now. Where does that stop? You can't possibly build native UIs, native clients for all these platforms. It's just not going to fly. Right? I expect that a lot of you would, but only the head of the head.
So we're at a transition period.
I think we're going through a transition period, because today it's a simple decision. Tomorrow it's not going to be a simple decision, right? Okay. There's immense war chests behind making the non-standard platforms today do really well. Right?
So Google's placing a big bet on HTML5 being a common open platform that will take on the big proprietary platforms. But one of the issues is, at the moment, the consumer is spending money on the closed proprietary platforms. And there are gatekeepers there, and they control who gets an app on the store. I mean, Google had an issue with Google Voice last summer, which seemed to take an awful long time getting approval on the Apple platform.
It's changed quite a bit, right? Apple made a vast reform of their terms of service, and things have changed quite a bit over the last few months. I think that's less of a problem today.
But, I mean, does Orange worry that the gatekeepers have so much control? I mean, Jonathan Zittrain's saying we're prisoners to the gatekeepers' limited business plans. You have to go with what they want to do. Have you had any concerns?
I'd like to come back to the point about choosing between doing your web app or doing your native app. I think that what you want to do with your application is critical as well. If you just want to do an information providing application, a news service, you're probably good enough with the web app because your application is going to look the same on all screens, more or less. But if you start to do media, video, this kind of entertainment type application, then you probably need to go more into a dedicated native app type approach because your experience is going to be very different on each device because you want to tailor it. To your point, we have problems with all. At Orange, we have distributed. We're developing our own applications because one of the biggest mobile web players in Europe, and we've distributed about 8 million applications on all devices. So we work a lot with all those platforms, and we have a real problem with providers preventing us from providing our video application. In France, we have 3 million repeat users of mobile television. So to them, having a mobile television is critical, and it took us forever to have it validated by some of the platforms. So really, the gatekeeper is a problem because we can't put our value proposition to our clients because they block it. Each platform has their own. Each platform has their own mental block, to put it this way, on what they want to block. Apple want to block everything that goes about music and about selling videos, selling books. They're critical about it, but other platforms have other mental blocks. So really, it's a challenge. But as Hugo said, we're not going to have tens of platforms. So in the end, it's going to be 2, 3, 4 maybe. So we're going to have consolidation. And to us as an operator, and I think it's the same for Ilja, we need competition between them. We need a fight. We need a struggle so that only the best survive and that somehow they're forced to be open in the end.
This is an interesting shift in power, though, because if we had this conversation 4 years ago, you were the gatekeeper,
Yeah.
right? The operator decided what I want in a device, and I'm not being facetious. It's just simply a change in dynamics. It was the OEM and the operator that controlled what got featured front and center. I mean, Ilja's company got built on top of that. If people want to discover other apps and download it, and then enter iPhone, enter Android.
Yeah, it's funny. It's the first time I'm on a panel, and I'm the small guy. Google's market cap is bigger than France Telecom, Telefónica's, and Deutsche Telekom's put together. And I'm not the monopolist. I'm the small guy being crushed by the big monopolists.
I should point out that Raoul has 182 million subscribers in 32 countries, so you're not the startup, are you?
Yeah, we're small. We're very small. They have 500 million.
Christian, where's Facebook's role in the future here?
In the future of apps?
The gatekeeper.
Or by the example of the gatekeeper. I mean, listen, we built a community that actually brought together 500 million users. And on top of that, we built a platform so that people could go build apps. And it's kind of interesting. I mean, we've publicly stated that we didn't set out to build the world's largest gaming platform. It happened. We're now the biggest gaming platform, bar none. We didn't go out and say, hey, it's Zynga and Playfish, you should go build these multi-billion-dollar businesses on top of our platform. It happened. We didn't say we want to be the second largest traffic driver to media sites. So what we now are trying to do is take a step back and realize that media, gaming, commerce, social commerce, mobile are all verticals that have built businesses on top of our platform. And we need to actually just be responsive to those verticals and the businesses being built on top of them, which means providing appropriate APIs so that you can build seamless experience on mobile. We launched this thing called single sign-on last week, which means that you sign on once to a device and you can then use that identity throughout multiple apps. So you don't have to connect to each individual app. We're trying to actually make it easier for developers to bring their friends from Facebook onto apps on multiple platforms. So doing a lot of things that we did on the web, on mobile as well. So that this notion of playing with my friends and actually discovering content with my friends is fairly seamless, abstracted from who the gatekeeper might be.
So now we're entering the era of the tablet computer as the preferred mobile device increasingly for a lot of people. How is this going to affect the development of the app economy? I mean, there's not just iPads, which have an extraordinary ability to get people spending money. I think we launched an app last week in the UK for Wired, and it's the future of publishing, many people are saying, although the numbers haven't yet kind of made the full case. But it's interesting. I mean, is the Android mobile tablet going to be the future?
So I can't say if it's going to be the future, but if you think about what OEMs want to do, right? They want to build devices with 7-inch screens, devices with 10-inch screens, with 8.5-inch screens, different form factors, et cetera. It's going to get pretty insane. We're certainly building, sort of doing our share of building SDK componentry that makes it really easy to design a layout that scales sort of seamlessly from one size to the next. But the diversity of form factors, device cost points, et cetera, that we're going to see in a year because of the tablet becoming economically feasible as a sub-500 device is insane, right? This game is going to get more complicated before it gets simpler from the point of view of a publisher who needs to decide where to deploy their resources.
And how is that publisher going to make money? Because on the iTunes App Store, the Apple Store, they have a couple hundred million credit cards. How are we going to make money through the Android platforms?
So one of the most powerful things that Apple has done, of course, is having a direct billing relationship with users, which is very clever in the way they've done it. The equivalent of that is carrier billing, right? I would say the best billing relationship that exists between someone with a mobile device and the rest of the world is their mobile phone bill. So I think that carrier billing is going to basically be the iTunes for everyone.
Good news, Raoul, you can be the big guy next year. Now, we're an open kind of platform here, so we want to take some questions for the audience. There are some microphones around, I think. And if you could put your hand up and then tell us who you are. We have Google and Facebook on the platform, and they've been very civil to each other. So if anybody wants to...
That's because Christian and I are very good friends.
There's a question over here.
I was just curious about the Babajan PBJS. You were talking at the very beginning about how you encourage app producers to take advantage of the promotional qualities of, say, a mobile platform, for example. How do you judge what's, other than the amount of money they'll pay you for that distribution, what goes into making the decisions about what you promote and how you promote it?
Ilja.
Well, I think we have a very elegant answer to that question, and we run a service what we call the paid discovery. So basically, the idea is that just as in Google search, majority of the screen is devoted to what's relevant to you, but the little side of the screen is basically allocated to those who bid for the visibility in your search engine. Because just as in any other area where the supply is not equal demand, the only way to regulate that is the price. At least as far as I remember from economic textbooks. So that's exactly how we do it on GetJar. Basically, 80% of the screen size is always dedicated to apps that we believe are most relevant to you. And we use algorithms, we use editorials, we use other approaches, including sometimes we measure the color of your phone. Believe it or not, the pink Motorola suggests a different set of apps than a black BlackBerry. I mean, it just happens. So, but we approximately 20% of this space we allocate for those developers who just want to be on that space, just as in Google search, and we run simple auction. So those who pay most simply get more visibility, and this is how they can control their discoverability. So basically now discovery becomes a function of your marketing. And I know if they're willing to, say, take a risk of saying, what, I have to be most visible because my product is best and my business model is strongest, we say, well, fine, if you can afford, outbid somebody who already was here, fine, that's like your risk and your chance. So we're really trying to do a little bit less of, say, human deciding who deserves to be where, and we'll let the market decide. We'll let themselves, decide, where we want to be and how much discoverability or visibility we want to get. So that's our approach.
So when you do a partnership, you did a partnership with Angry Birds just now. You can get some phenomenal results.
Yes, absolutely. Actually, that was a pretty cool launch. Just for those of you, probably majority of you actually have played Angry Birds. How many of you have? Right, that's a crazy Finnish game. But one of the things what we are able to do as a cross-platform app store is really connect all the platforms. So the strength of Angry Birds on Android is built on their success on the iPhone. That's simple as that. So we launched Angry Birds a couple of weeks ago, and first day we had 1 million downloads of Angry Birds just on Android devices. Now, when you go deeper into what's behind the success, the social component was extremely strong. Basically, what happened is there's a lot of consumers who are expecting Angry Birds on Android, and they put together all the builds, like the Symbian build, iPhone build, Android build, and that's the enabled the viral loop. So once it was available, the tweets about Angry Birds being available on GetJar were coming at a frequency of 10 tweets per second. Now, believe it or not. But what was happening is, one friend is reading that, hey, Angry Birds is available on Android. He downloads it on Symbian, and he retweets it because he can download it from Symbian. So his buddy with the iPhone downloads it again and says, wow, that's cool, and retweets it further. So the viral loop is closed, and there is a lot of that success really built on virality. So, we encourage that. We allow developers to do things like that.
Any businesses are getting 10 tweets per second? Ask a question, though. Tell us who you are.
Yes. Alfonso Wonsheim, local.ch. We're the official Yellow Pages in Switzerland. And, one of the most downloaded apps on the different shops. But honestly, to react to your statement, Ilja, it's highly frustrating, even more in an app than on Google, to be found. At the end of the day, all these shops are just highly inefficient in promoting it. And at the end, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you're on the top 10, you happen to remain there if you're good enough. But that's definitely something, as an app provider, we'll gear to an open and efficient market, even though Google has its frustration of its own to be on the top 10. At the end of the day, that's much more efficient and transparent than being on different shops. And definitely cost of developing an ROI is a story for us too. Doing it for 5 different mobile platforms or app platforms, even worse, would be highly inefficient. So I think from an app provider perspective, we're all looking forward to a bit more transparency and definitely much more efficiency in the resources. What's your take on that?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, you are totally right. Today, discovery of the apps is not really as good as it could be. So there are 2 things that at least we at GetJar are doing. One is improve the predicting ability of deciding which app is most relevant to consumer in a given context. So actually, we have gone away from top, say, 100 chart 2 years ago. Right now, if you come to us on a Symbian device in the UK, you will see a different set of apps than if you come to us to a BlackBerry device in the US. We go all the way forward. For example, we measure what apps you had downloaded before, and it's all aimed at predicting what the app in a very given moment for a very given user, given his history, his search, his color of the device, is most relevant to him, like right there, right now. But the second part, what we're encouraging, is we're enabling developers all the tools to leverage marketing outside the app stores. We believe 75% of app discovery will happen outside the app store. For example, in generic search engine, for example, on your own web pages, where you can include our widget, and we will give you free SMS, we will give you support of all the platforms and builds, where you can basically translate your web traffic into your app users using your own in-house inventory. So our belief is that yes, building recommendation and quality of the discovery is an important feature of a store. We believe that 25% of applications will be discovered within the App Store. We also believe that 75% will be discovered elsewhere, radio, TV, print, web, and so on. And we provide developers all the tools that allow and make this discovery easier. So you can promote your iPhone app right on your web page. That's our approach.
Is this an opportunity for Google, which is pretty good at helping us find information?
I was going to say that you can't really run away from the reality, which is either you have a lot of money to promote your app, and there will be plenty of channels for you to do that through, or you build a spectacular product, right? That becomes viral, that is sort of speaks for itself. if you're a news publisher building an spectacular product, probably means having a great editor, having like just really good content. And then you can, you have opportunities to distribute that in a world with micropayments, where you can sell individual stories, where you can sell a whole app, you can sell subscriptions. But if your product isn't really good, the only way you can promote it is by using, a lot of money. And I'm not sure that's necessarily sustainable.
I do think there's a community aspect to this as well, right? So the Toronto star that was featured earlier on is only probably relevant to people related, or at least having an affinity for Toronto. So apply that to games or to other stuff. How do you add relevant discovery to the search capabilities or to the store, so that when I log on from Toronto, and based on the fact that I like this, and this, you actually editorially recommend that? I think this is a challenge to all of us. I mean, everybody in this panel. How do we help you, the user, find the most relevant things so that you don't only consume the top 5 apps featured on the store, and build a healthy ecosystem around it?
Another question over here.
Hi, Emma Barnett from The Telegraph. I just wanted to ask Hugo a question. If, as it was talked about yesterday, a lot of people are using apps for social purposes and social platforms, and Google wants to stay relevant, obviously YouTube's very successful as a built-in app on the iPhone, etc. Is Google actually working on a social network platform, as we've heard about, called Google Me, to rival Facebook?
Yeah. Think of all, I think Google Me is a terrible name.
It is, isn't it? So what's it going to be called?
It's a terrible name. So we're as I think Eric has said many times, we're not working on a social network platform that's just going to be another social network platform. But we do think that social is an ingredient for success for any app going forward. Search and advertising being probably the best 2 examples that I would mention. So that's how we're thinking about the problem. I happen to think, to Christian's point earlier on the niche communities, that personalization is absolutely huge. Being able to relate the different signals that a user gives you, whether you're Facebook or Google or whoever, I think is going to be a key to success. And some of those signals are social in nature, some aren't. But we think of social much more broadly as an ingredient rather than a sort of a vertical platform play.
Didn't Google make it harder for Facebook recently to get access to your Gmail contacts?
Apparently so.
Does that bother you?
Apparently so. I think TechCrunch covered everything that Google has said in response that we've made. So I think they have an ability to control how you export your data. We provide the ability for users to export their data from Facebook as well. So it's a semantic argument.
Any semantic questions?
Over
We only got
here.
room for a couple more.
Over here, hello. I'm Jennifer Zeza, the social strategist at Lithium. As a user, there really are 2 communities that I access that you, Google, and Facebook kind of represent, each a different one. There's one community which are my friends and family, and I go to them and I trust them for certain things. But there's other things which my friends and family are never going to be, I know they're not going to have the answers for me, like what hotel to stay at in Monte Carlo. My friends can't answer that question. There's a virtual community of people who are in the know about hotels in Monte Carlo that I need to tap into, and that's what Google represents. So this once again, you guys kind of fighting over who's going to win. Why can't there just be 2 paradigms that exist out there? And what's your kind of response to that?
I think there's multiple paradigms that can exist out there. Listen, I mean, let's talk about, say, 1 billion people, right? And 1 billion people will probably play in different social grids at the same time. So I have a Twitter persona, my Facebook persona, my LinkedIn persona, and I use each of these vertical personas for different things. So our belief is simply that we have a fairly significant social graph that we're willing to lend to vertical applications. So to your question about location, these travel apps where you can actually go to Lonely Planet or other sites and actually discover what your friends have recommended, but also people that might be like your friends. So it's how the entrepreneurs build cool applications on top of social graphs is something that we're trying to help and encourage, but it really is the knowledge from that vertical about what's going to be relevant to that user. Hotels, when you're going to Monte Carlo, or apps when you're on the iStore. It is algorithm plus people, and I don't think it's only one or the other.
Alternatively, you could ask Spencer for Prince Albert's business card, because I think he has some very good personal recommendations. So listen, our time is up. We have a fantastic panel. You just have to feel sorry. Is there one more? Thank you.
Very briefly, for Google, what is the percentage, it's probably very small, but the question is whether it's growing, of your business that is done as a internal to somebody else's app, sort of the private label Google search within something else? Have you looked at that statistic and where it's heading?
So we have several tools, for custom search, as we call it, and it is a very small percentage. It is definitely growing, but what's more interesting is that it's part of a suite of business productivity tools that's actually growing insanely quickly. And this is an area that we are now investing a lot in. How do I make it simple for you, especially if you're a medium business, to manage it, to create documents, share documents in real time or otherwise.
Thank you. So just feel sorry for the publisher of the UK edition of Wired, who was at the Do Lectures in Cardigan in Wales about a month after this came out, where Tim Berners-Lee was speaking, and he collared him and he pushed him in the corner. And he said, "So you think the web is dead, huh? Rumors of its death have been greatly exaggerated." Let me just thank our fantastic panel, Raoul, Ilja, Hugo, Christian.
And I'm going to thank our fantastic moderator for keeping the train rocketing along.
Thank you.
And of course, so thank you.